Okay, hello and welcome. Welcome to this CNCF on-demand webinar series. And I'm super excited to be here, even though we cannot be in the same place together. My name is Viktor Gamov, and I am a developer advocate in Kong. And today we're going to talk about Kubernetes Ingress. As many of you know, or if you don't, it's worth to repeat that Ingress, it is one of the most important components of your application deploys because it allows users to actually start using your application. It provides the way how traffic from outside will reach some of the services that you deployed inside of your Kubernetes cluster. And today I will be showing you how you can extend this knowledge of Kubernetes Ingress by implementing some of the extra functionality that allows your application to be more robust and you as a developer can do less. So let's see if our, as I like to say, screen sharing is actually working. So not a projector. We don't have projectors yet, still doing screen sharing. I work as a developer advocate here in Kong, and if you want to ask me a question or provide a suggestion or want to talk about some Kubernetes stuff, feel free. You can shoot me a DM in Twitter or you can write me in Telegram. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I usually stream or post some of the cool videos. Okay, so let me briefly outline some of the things that we're going to be talking today. What I'm going to be, I'll try. It's still um, things that will be depend on the behavior of some of the infrastructure and computers and stuff. You know, computers are computers are notoriously unreliable, like people. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cloud native application management. I will introduce some of the important things about Ingress. If you know this part, it's okay. I'm not going to spend much of the time. I'll just provide a quick refresher. For those of you who don't know, you will get a nice introduction to understand what I'm going to be talking about. And during the demo or during this introduction, I will talk a little bit about the classical REST services that you need to expose to outside world. You need to expose something with the HTTP. I will show you how we can expose gRPC services, which is based on the HTTP2 protocol. And we talk a little bit about how you can actually supercharge your Ingress. We're going to be talking some advanced features. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the plugins that we can apply on Ingress to provide some extra functionality that you might not have time or desire to implement yourself. So when we deploy our applications in Kubernetes, our cloud native applications, we usually deploy them in Kubernetes cluster and based on replicas, replica config in our specification for our deployment, those services can be deployed, those pods that will contain the instances of your application will be deployed in different nodes in Kubernetes cluster. And in order to provide the access to those services or to those application from outside world, there is a special type of service called load balancer that will be attaching to external IP address and providing this communication to connect external um, external traffic based on particular routes, based particular routing rules to particular service. When we deploy multiple other applications, we're going to be using or leveraging the same pattern that many of you know. So, of course, I'm talking about the bin packing. So those pods and containers will be distributed across different nodes of Kubernetes cluster. And for different services, we might have different load balancers to get access to this. So it's a very like simplistic way of thinking of this. So each service, if you see this brownish, it's or reddish or something like a brownish and reddish color, that will represent orders service and to have its own load balancer. We do have load balancer for analytics service, and we have a for billing service. Now, so what about providing a centralized access? Instead of like providing a load balance service, we can provide a proxy. And this proxy essentially is a Kubernetes ingress. That object exists and allows to create different rules and provides like a common entry point for your applications. And Ingress, as many of resource definitions that are available in Kubernetes, are usually vendor agnostic. So you don't have anything together with vendor. So let's break this down. Let's take a look. What do we have here? So previous one. So first of all, the special type of this component is called Ingress. Ingress has a name. In this particular case, we're exposing some of the BIOS services. We specify in a host, and we specify in the path where the service will be accessible. In this particular case, the BIOS service should exist, and the BIOS service will be accessible to outside world through example.com/BIOS, and all the traffic will go there. But functionality-wise, Ingress, it's the same load balancer, right? It provides the ways how to do this, that provide the features that load balancers have. And those features are relying on some of the things that you can offload from your application. You don't need to provide the ways how your application will manage, say, certificates for your TLS communication. Dealing with the load balancing, throttling, different other communication pattern. Maybe if your applications inside your Kubernetes cluster are deployed with enabled service mesh, the external traffic needs to be accessed to those. So in order to activate this, in order to start working with, we are just applying the Kubernetes object to API server. And based on this API, there would be a component called Ingress controller that will be listening all objects ingress and will materialize them and create actual implementation, that create the actual proxy here. Sometimes, or many times, when we're implementing some functionality in our applications, we don't really think much, at least when on the very beginning, about like day two responsibilities, things around, say, authentication, how to authorize user, how to authenticate user, how we can check those, how we can provide, for example, caching capabilities. Some of the requests may be static websites, some of the JavaScript-based websites maybe you can cache the responses of those. And there's some logic, for example, a rate limiting or transformation of requests if you need to support different versions of API and support some of the legacy systems and expose new version to outside world and still route this traffic to the legacy system and do transformation. And who will implement this? And there's a neat part. You don't. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. With the comic, it actually was pretty, I think it's pretty awesome graphic TV show that's available on Amazon. So I highly recommend to check this out. It's called Invincible. So, and essentially, what if this the proxy will handle all this stuff? So essentially, we have an ingress as a vendor neutral way to configure your application, and after that, provide some of the vendor extensions in order to implement things that we interested in, implementing all these requirements and things like that. So that's what exactly Kong does. So Kong is the open source API gateway or API management solution. And the proxy server, there's a bunch of names, bunch of things, but essentially Kong does many things for you, so you don't have to. And there is a integration with this Quang gateway, so it runs fairly well in Kubernetes, but it requires additional component that allows to configure those things. It's called Quang Ingress controller. Now, with these vendor neutral things, we also implement some of the custom resources. In this particular case, Quang plugin. It is a custom resource that allows to configure some of the plugins that are available in Quang out of the box. So though you don't need to do this, and those are open source, those plugins you can implement like right away, and just do the thing. And the way how it looks like, essentially, it's a couple of things here. We have a name here. If you want to implement key-based authentication, just like put the key of application inside a application header. And after that, configure Ingress with annotation. So we will add one small annotation called Kong plugin. As you remember, let me quickly show you back. When we're going back here, the name of this plugin is API auth. And with this reference, we just specify this in this ingress. So meaning that the Quang will apply this plugin in this particular route. So when we're hitting bills, we will be able to access this and do some of the plugin stuff here. One of the things this particular example is missing, and I will show you with my demo, is that you also, as a part of the spec, you need to specify the Ingress controller class that you will be accessing using this Ingress. And you can chain different plugins. You can define multiple different plugins, and you can apply this to one Ingress. And the neat part of this, everything happens in real time. So there's no need to restart anything or do roll of your services. It will start working immediately. So that's what we will be dealing with, and the Quang itself provides like majority, like variety of different tools and plugins that you can use today. Today we're going to be looking on gRPC. We're going to be looking on some REST capabilities, but there's also nice plugin that allows you, for example, expose your gRPC service that you're running inside to outside or as a REST service. So if you have some services that you need to, some of the clients that need access to the gRPC service, but they don't know how to talk gRPC, there is a plugin that allows you to expose this gRPC service as a REST, and that's just one of the many plugins available. The Kong supports different load balancing techniques. You can configure this, all classic round robin, weight-based load balancing supported, sticky session if you still need to use this in 2021 for some reasons. Advanced routing can be happening based on classic on the route, like, or on the path, or it can happen based on HTTP method. Like we can if it needs to do some modifications, we need to go call get service. We can route this one based on the header. You can provide a special header that allows to do different routing things. Observability is also important part of the day two responsibilities, and instead of implementing this stuff itself, there is I think it's a practice already, and the expectations that this stuff needs to be integrating with the majority of the tools. So Quang does integration with things like Jaeger for tracing, and Zipkin also for tracing, the Prometheus for connecting some of the metrics, and so forth and so on. Specifically to Kubernetes, Quang also integrates with Cert Manager for automatic certificate updates, and hopefully I will be able to show you this today. So I will be exposing some of my services to HTTPS, or rather gRPCs service, and so far and so on. So I'm suggesting that we will drill to all these features a little bit more in this demo. So I would suggest we will switch in and do the actual thing. And for this, welcome to my demo. So there's a couple things that we're going to be doing right now. So first of all, I will deploy a bunch of services. As a matter of fact, I think let me do a quick step back, and I will undeploy. So you're going to see a few applications here. It is a application that I developed called quote service. So the quote service, essentially, it's a generator of random quotes from very popular movies, books, etc. It uses library called Faker that allows me to generate different type of responses. Instead of having some of the your traditional HTTP bean, or I don't know, like something around foobar, let's do something interesting. It is deployed in the containers already somewhere here in Docker Hub, and deployment will expose my container port. It also will include service, so we will be able to connect to the service. And let's take a look on Ingress. So for now, this Ingress looks like this. It is just the Ingress, back to future Ingress, and I will using some additional annotations because my Spring Boot application might not be configured. The application itself is written in Java. It uses Spring Boot, but it's not configured to ignore some of the additional paths. So it's on the root. So in this case, I want to tell, this is where already I'm start using functionality from the conk ingress. So here I'm stripping the path, so I don't need to, I don't have any like weird errors. And here I also specifying that ingress class here belongs to conk. We're going to talk about plugins in a second, like just give me a moment to deploy and explore this application. So if I go ahead here and let me do my fonts a little bit bigger, I just noticed that this is probably would be better for many of you. And I will apply this in my Kubernetes in Back to Future. So based on this ingress, it will expose this Back to Future through this quote service to outside world. So if I will just do from namespace conk, let me show you service and where the conk is listening stuff and how I can access this system now. So it is conk proxy itself service. This service is a type of load balancer, and the access to this system provided via this external IP address, or I can say HTTP. I created a DNS name that will be connected to this IP address. So if I'll do conk, so no root matches these values, which is already good thing because we start getting response from conk. And because I didn't configure anything, I didn't configure ingress to connect to this. I need to hit this Back to Future. So in this case, I'm going in my Insomnia. I'm going to be using Insomnia because it's just like a much nicer like visual tool to connect to my cluster. Now I'm going to this one. My proxy address is conk gam of dev, and when I click send, and I think this random quote is perfectly just like I couldn't be more happy with this random quote. So what we can see here, some of the extra headers that was added by Kong, because it's the first time it called this application, latency is higher because it is kind of like a cold call. But the next time in Java code is not properly optimized by just-in-time compiler, when I will run this, and now you see the latency is much slower. Yeah, so latency is like lower, not slower. Um, and now we see in some quotes from Back to the Future. So the next thing is that let's implement something. So something that I can show you repeat on interval. So I will calling this service every 2 seconds, and we will see results here immediately. So this application will continue to run while we implement this plugin. So first plugin that I want to implement is that situation where I can provide some of the rate limiting functionality to my applications or to my service where my consumers not paying us anything. So that's why our SLA would be lower. We can limit them by only 5 requests per minute. It's sufficient for a small application that generates random code. So you can call this application like multiple times during the minute. So in this case, you can call them like 12 times. So now I'm go ahead and just go in here and apply this different namespace. So let me open this tool window for Kubernetes. Where is the tool window? Okay, I cannot open it for some reason. Let's do this manually then. Plugins, and I'll just one is a free tier. And when I do get Kong plugins, and I should be able to see those plugins. So it's a custom resource. This custom resource has a custom controller, Kong Ingress controller, that will create the instance of this plugin. Now, so next thing that I need to activate this plugin, and the way how I can do this by edit Ingress, and I will ingress Back to Future Ingress. I need to edit this one. So I don't have this thing here, so that's why I'm going ahead and I'll just do copy paste from here. So name of the plugin, rate free tier. So, and immediately what I will start seeing, immediately new headers start appearing here. One of the headers is that rate limit. It says how many requests will be allowed. And now we start getting this too many requests response immediately. And it will reset after 18 seconds. And right now it will retry, and just wait for a few more seconds. And a few seconds more. Now we can getting response back. Responses are coming back. We're good. And again, too many requests. And as you saw, this happened almost like without me changing anything. There's nothing in the deployment. There's no broken connections or whatnot. So that's for rate limiting plugin. So let's go next and try to enable some more advanced thing. So next thing, I'm going to be using another service, but in this case it's going to be Chuck Norris quote service. So this service will generate some of the random facts about Chuck Norris, as known as a very epic person. So we can go ahead and just do Kubernetes kube control apply file Kubernetes, and we'll just use Chuck Norris. The application is running, so let me quickly show you what is going on inside this application. So it's a Spring Boot application, runs the port 8080. Some of the liveness probes also available out of the box from Spring Boot, which is very nice, nice thing to have. Now, for our Ingress, our Chuck Norris is available through Chuck Norris endpoint. Now we can see it works from Kong. And now we start getting messages about Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris does not use exception when programming. He has not been able to identify any of this code that not exceptional. So, you know, that's what that's what we have with this Chuck Norris humor. So let's assume that we have a use case where we need to restrict access to, not to restrict access, we need to provide a SLA for some of the paid users. So that's why we're going to be implementing some of the paid tier plugins. So first plugin that we're going to be using here is the same plugin that we used before. You just saw this. But in this case, we're going to be using this paid tier. We name this a paid tier. Instance of this plugin would be rate limiting by 10 requests per minute for consumer. So in this here we limit by IP. So anyone with different IP will have like a 5 requests per minute. But here it's something named consumer. So it is a special type of API that available in Kong itself. It's nothing to do with Kubernetes, nothing to do with our Ingress controller. Consumer allows to provide some of the kind of delegate some of the pieces of functionality to the thing that will be running inside here. So in this particular case, we need to identify our consumer. Who will be consuming this API? In this particular case, we have a special consumer that will be using a username, and API key will be stored as a secret in our Kubernetes. And another plugin that we will going to be using here is using user authentication. So when we enable this, we won't be able to perform free operations because Chuck Norris quotes are exceptional, his data is exceptional, so we cannot just simply use this for free. So we need to have someone who supply us with certain keys. We have a generic secret that we'll be using. So let me first of all apply this secret. So API key was created, and now I can go ahead and create this paid plugin. So those plugins are created. So let me show you quickly. So right now, the Chuck Norris is just the same thing as we did this. Repeat on interval. Just do repeat every 30 seconds. And it will just like running this quote service. And the moment I will edit my Ingress and enable these two plugins, in this particular case, user auth, and let's start with user auth first. Use something like a step by step, so you will see what is going on here. Chuck Norris quote services. We want to have another annotation that define our plugin. And in this particular case, we're going to be using this one. And immediately, we should start seeing that the request is unauthorized. So in order to fix this, what we're going to do is we provide a special header. So in this case, we provide a header called API key. And since we created this API key and stored this inside the Kubernetes secret, so let's try to call this. Boom. Now it works with API key. Let me show you one more time. I disable this. I get no API key found in request, so I not authorized. I can do something like this one. It says invalid credentials, and it needs to be case sensitive because this is how we created this in our now we successfully provided authorization, but like what we actually wanted to restrict access here, not to restrict access per se, but also provide the level of SLA layer. So we go in here and providing rate limiting. So I'm go ahead here, repeat on interval, say 2 seconds, click start, and we will see this. I will go ahead and do Ingress. And now I am also stacking this plugin together. So now it will use two plugins. And what I will see immediately, I start seeing that my Chuck Norris service was able to catch up and pick up all this kind of stuff. Now, rate limiting for 10. And there's the time when this will be reset. And everything looks good. So we already submitted 10 requests, 2 main requests. I think it is a winning. Now, there is a situation where we want to distinguish some of our users who have a premium tier and some users who have a platinum tier. So that's why we also created another configuration for this plugin, another modification, another variation of this. So we're going to be using this free tier. For this one, we're providing 100 requests per minute. So something that you will not exceed. We're going to be using also key off, but in this case, it would be different key. And in another case, it's going to be using different username. So like when this request will come for particular API key, based on this logic, we can bring up configuration for the plugin, different configuration for the plugin. So like imagine you might have some of the logic where you can provide the different API keys for different users. Some of them will able to get access to platinum features of the same service. Some of them are not. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So let's apply this. Okay. So the platinum tier was created. We're good to go here. Now we need to enable this platinum tier in our Ingress plugin for Chuck Norris. So platinum tier. So as you can see here, this platinum tier configuration that I have it here, just only will take this plugin. This plugin. And the rest of the things will depend on this consumer. So we'll go in this in consumer, and this consumer will bound to this plugin. This is the instance of this plugin. This is kind of like an actual instance. This is class of the plugin. Think about this if you're talking about like how you're thinking about this as a programming. This is your class, and this is the instance. And this is where we're showing that this consumer belongs to this instance. This is how they can tie together. So I will go ahead and do edit ingress. I will edit this ingress by providing so when I submit this right now, so nothing will change for here because header here uses API key please. But what we're going to be doing here, so I want to submit this different API key called roundhouse click. When I click send, I will get unauthorized. Why? Because a secret was not created. So let me go ahead and create a secret here that will have a concrete type key auth, and it will have key roundhouse kick, and Chuck is our API key. So I can go ahead here, enable this, and after that I can go and start doing this um, repeat on interval every second, because we have plenty. Now we have a plenty of requests that we can do. There's plenty of stuff that can be done here. So I think that's a pretty cool feature that allows you to configure different policies to your application without changing the logic of the application, without implementing this apart, because much often you want to change these policies than changing the code of this application. And next thing that I want to show you is to implement another quote service, but in this case, this quote service will be using a thing called um, the gRPC. So let me go ahead to create some of these secrets for my service. I'll just do Kubernetes, not Chuck. We'll go into Dune and gRPC secrets. I'll generate some of this self-certain certificate that I will be deploying my Kubernetes cluster, because I want to show you some of the bits of gRPC and the secure gRPC. So I will be using self-site certificate to expose my service inside the Kubernetes cluster using gRPC-S protocol, and this is where I can show you how it looks like. So my deployment, so in this case, like it's code service, but it actually gets the quotes from the Dune, from the book. That's I was super exciting for upcoming movie. That's why I created this service that will bring some of the quotes from the book. I'm running this gRPC service here, and I'm using gRPC as service security certificate, which has created this and send this as our secret in our Kubernetes cluster. That's nothing else. It's the same application that just exposes a different port for this. For the service, same, nothing super special except one thing. So our Ingress will have special type of annotation called protocols, meaning that all requests that will go to this will have to go through the protocol gRPC or gRPCS. So my root will go here. Another thing that I want to expose this service through secure, and this is where I'm showing you how you can configure access to this service using Let's Encrypt cert manager. And the TLS and this HTTPS certificate will be provided by this service. Now, so I'm go ahead and do Dune. So I have now a third quote service container will be creating. We will quickly monitor if anything bad will happen here. gRPC service created, and some the gRPC service things are there. Now, how does it work? I do have, let me show you a little quick. My gRPC service contains in a few things. First of all, it includes the quote service that has two flavors. One flavor is get quote is just a regular request response. Another one is a stream. When I call this, it will return stream 10 responses to me. That's one of the cool features of gRPC. And this quote message will include some information about my service. So in order to hit this service, I already created this quote. I already added this proto file to my Insomnia, so I can call this. And when I go ahead and do this, I get this message immediately here. So that's response came from my gRPC-S service. And if I will do something to show you that it actually runs correctly, I'll do something like curl minus V. So, and I'm hitting this to, it has a successfully TSL handshake. And also it shows that it runs HTTP2 protocol, which is our gRPC. And by the end of the day, it still hits the quonk, and the quonk says, hey, I'm expecting in this particular call, I'm expecting to receive like this one, this message. I'm expecting to see a gRPC call here. And how it is that, how it knows this, and let me take a look on this ingress. So in this ingress, I'm saying that my protocols that I will be expecting here, gRPC or gRPCS. So this ingress kind of it's like a mutually exclusive. I cannot run a HTTP here, only gRPC or gRPCS. But it's okay. It's more than enough for me because I'm hitting this Dune quote service. Another thing that I also want to touch here is streaming service. So it's a streaming also supported. So when I click this and all these responses were streamed, like 10 responses from my service were streamed. So it's not like one response with 10 messages. So 10 different responses were streamed based on this one. So let me show you how it looks like from perspective of this application. So application is actually where is it? How I can disable this word wrapping? Yep, of course. So in this service, there's a word wrapping. Yep, the word wrapping. So the stream service was invoked and the get quote was invoked. So it's two different services, two methods of the same service, two different methods of the same service. Now, and the neat part of this, if you go ahead and do docs.conk, if you go in here and you will look in some plugins, for example, rate limiting plugin, you will see what kind of protocols it does support. So this is open source version of this rate limiting plugin, and it works on top of HTTP, HTTPS, or like if you look in something like there's called advanced rate limiting plugin. So this is the part of the Conk Connect subscription. So essentially, if you have Conk Connect subscription, you will get the access to this plugin. And this plugin supports also rate limiting for gRPC. If you in this type of jazz, if we're talking about request transformer. So we do request transformer, just regular one, and it does support only HTTP, HTTPS. So in documentation, you can see how we can configure these plugins in Kubernetes, how we can configure this using admin API, but like specifically we're interested as a Kubernetes ingress and how we can enable these plugins as a part of Kubernetes ingress. All right, so let me briefly bring back the agenda a little quick so I can talk a little bit about this, what you saw, and actually was I able to fulfill all the promises. So we talk about applications management, Ingress. You have the idea what's Ingress and how the Ingress can be become the more advanced feature by implementing some of the plugins. I show you how we can expose REST services. I show you how we can expose gRPC service. And I showed you how you can implement some of the plugins, rate limiting, the key authorization and things like that. Quant has much more to offer. For example, I was doing some of the things around the integration with Okta, and my application doesn't require to know anything about Okta, and that's just like it just works. The last thing that I want to mention here is that next week, if you like to learn a little bit more about Quonk and what it does, we are doing an online conference that will be totally free, and you can join this and watch different talks, and we'll have like a bunch of different demos. We'll be showing some of the features of Kuma, which is another CNCF project that we at Conk contributing actively, which is like a service mesh. We will show some of the other functionalities there. So I highly recommend you to check this out. So with this, I remind you, my name is Viktor Gamov. It was a pleasure talking to you. If you learned something new or you were entertained during the session, don't forget to praise me on Twitter. And with this, my name is Viktor Gamov. As always, have a nice day. Bye-bye.